Hello, welcome to Introduction to Databases and SQL. In this session, we are going to discuss about MySQL constraints, default and check. Let's begin. MySQL default constraint. The default constraint is easy to set a default value for a column. We know whenever we are not specifying any constraint, by default, null is going to be the default value for all the columns that we have seen. When I say id int, the id value is going to be null by default, right? So we want to give any other value, we can actually enforce this particular default constraint. It is used to set a default value for a column. Otherwise, by default, it is going to be null, right? So now you want to give certain value, we can make use of this default constraint. The default value will be added to all new records if no other value is specified. So whenever we are not providing any value to that particular column, the default value will automatically taken. That we need to set by enforcing the default constraint. As an example, here what I'm doing is I'm creating a table orders. I have an order ID, which is not null, auto increment, primary key. I have an order amount that is float, and I have order date actually. So this is just a table where we are creating a primary key with auto increment. Later, what I'm going to do is I will be altering this table order and I will make the order date as a default value, order date containing a default value, which is actually the current date. So I can use this current date method, or I may go with this current date method also, right? So I'm going to change this order date by setting up a default value, which is the current date. So this current date or current date are MySQL date functions. So this is one example. The other way, simply what we can do is in this, let's say in this person's one table, I'm going to create ID, last name, first, etc. And when I have a city, so the city, the default city, I'm giving as some name actually. Let's say the default city I'm giving as New Delhi. Okay, if this city value is not provided, by default, New Delhi will be the city. So let's understand this first, and later we go to the check constraint. So I'm going to create this particular order table. So I have this syntax available. So the code available. So let me actually see what are the tables are there in my DB. So first of all, select database, my DB database, and we can say show tables. Show tables. Show tables, right? Show tables. Yeah. So we have all these tables. So we don't have order table actually. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to copy this. Okay, create table orders, order ID int, which is not null, auto increment, and I'm specifying the primary key here itself. The order ID is going to be the primary key, and you have the auto increment. Order amount is float. I'm not specifying whether it is not null or something. So by default, it is going to be null actually. The default value is going to be null. So I want to show you that. And then order date is date. Order date is date. So default value is going to be null for this also. Now let's actually see DESC orders. Now we can actually see order ID is not null. It's a primary key. And order amount, which is a null. Order date, which is also null. So now you check actually how the default value is getting created. show create table orders. You see here, create table orders, order ID, int, not null, auto increment, order amount, float, default value is null. So when I'm not specifying anything here, the default value is going to be null. Order date, default is going to be null, right? So now what we want to do, we don't want null values. We want to keep some other values that we specify, right? Yeah, so this is how a table is getting created with the default as null, unless you specify not null or you give any other value. Okay, so now what I want to do is, I just want to alter this particular table orders by adding the default value for this order date. So for that, I'm going to do like this: alter table orders, alter table orders. What I'm going to do, I'm going to modify this particular order date, okay, which was earlier default null, whose type is date. Now I am saying default is a keyword. Now I can actually use any of these methods: current underscore date. Okay, this method or current date method. So let me enter actually. So now query okay, one row is affected, 0 rows affected, of course. So let me actually now show create table orders. Now you can actually see order date, default, current date or current date actually. So anything is fine, current date or current underscore date, anything you can give. So that actually gives us the default date. So now what happens in this order table, if I'm not providing the order date, the current date is actually going to be taken as the default one. Okay, so let me add actually some data to this. So system CLS, and here just DESC order. So now have order ID, order amount, and order date. The default value is going to get generated based on the current date method, current date function of MySQL. Now I would like to insert into orders. What all I need to insert? Order ID is auto increment. I need not to do it. Order date default. If I'm not giving, it will take default. So order amount, I have to order amount. So order amount only I have to give you. So I say order amount, and this is actually 50,000. Okay, so one row created, but when you select star from orders, you will actually see the order ID automatically generated, and the default uh, order date is going to be the current date. Now you can actually see the current date is 20th August, right? And order ID is automatically getting generated. So auto increment is already there. Okay, now next what I do, I want to give this time order date also. Order amount I want to give, order date also, right? Order underscore date, and here I am going to give the date. So date you need to specify in single quote. So the format for date is year, y, and then we will have the month, let's say August, and let's say 15. Okay, so here I'm giving my order date. If I'm not giving, the default value will be the current date. So if I'm giving, it is going to take my value actually. So now let's say select star from orders. Now whatever the date I have given, that has been taken. Otherwise, the default value is going to be this one. Okay, so this is how you can actually specify the default value. Now what I want to do is let me also show tables here once. Just see tables. What are all tables over here? I have the person one table also created, right? So let me actually drop the table, drop table person one. drop table name persons one actually, right? So sorry, it's a persons one. Yeah, dropped actually. Now let me say show tables. Now you can actually see there is no persons table. So what I'm going to do here is I just want to tell you this example also. Okay, so in this example, what we are doing, we are actually creating a table called persons one, ID int not null, last name not null, and first name varchar default is empty. Okay, so I don't want any name actually. I don't want it to be null, so I am giving an empty space. Agent, by default it's going to be null, and first name default is not null actually, it's an empty string, and city default I want to give Delhi actually. Okay, so after that I just close this and I will run. So it's created, right? So now I want to show create table persons one. Then you can actually see here the city default value is New Delhi. So you can actually specify default values like that. Okay, default is a column level constant and you will actually apply to a column, right? So here first name default is, if I'm not giving, that is empty, this is not null, and city if I'm not giving, that is going to be New Delhi actually. So let me try giving the values to that. Okay, so before that let me see persons one. So here you can see ID not null, last name not null, first we have the default value space here, and age null is there default, and city New Delhi is the default value. So now let me insert into persons one values. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am not going to give few values. So what ID I'm going to give, right, and the last name I'm going to give, and first name I want to take default value, and age I want to give actually, and values city I don't want to give because default value I want default value to be provided. So ID is, let's say, one, last name is actually say Tata. Okay, so in strings you should like this, string is actually single quote Tata, and then age I am going to give is, let's say, 18. Okay, now let's see, first name empty string will be the default value, and the city is going to be New Delhi. So one row affected, there is no issue at all. And when I select star from persons one, select star from persons one, now you can actually see New Delhi has come up, and first name is an empty thing actually. So empty string, it's not null. That we need to observe actually here. Okay, so this is how we can actually specify a default constraint. Okay, so now let me actually go to the orders table once and just show you. Yeah, select star from orders. Now again, this time I want to give you some values here. So I don't want to give the order date. So order date default I want to take, and I want to give some amount here. Let's say this is 70,000, and order date I don't want to mention. Yeah, query okay. So again, so I just want to give some order amount, that is, let's say, 60,000. And again, I want to give some order date, that is, let's say, 35,000. Yeah, so like that I can actually give this time some 45,000. Yeah, so let me select everything from these orders. Now you can actually see order ID is getting automatically incremented, and whenever there is no date provided, so automatically the current date actually being provided. Okay, so this is the current date, 21 is the current date actually, right? So this is about the default constraints, and let's go and understand about the check constraint. check constraint is also one of the useful constraints. The check constraint is used to limit the value range that can be placed in a column or a field. So whenever I am providing certain value to my column or a field, I can actually limit the value range. So check constraint on a column allow only certain values for the column. Okay. So check constraint on a column will allow only certain values for this column. So that we have to write actually what columns you want to, what data we want to allow for that particular column. And one more thing, so check constraint on a column is there and check constraint on a table is also there. So check constraint on a column will allow only certain values for this column. Check constraint on a table can limit the values in certain columns based on values in the other columns also. This is something interesting, right? So you have, let's say, some 5 columns. Now you can actually have a check constraint on the whole table and you can limit certain data in the columns based on the values in the other columns. Okay, I have column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5. Now, whenever I am inserting data, I can actually say all the column data value should not be greater than 1 lakh or should not be less than 1 lakh. That means every column data it is taking and it is doing certain computation. And we can actually specify whether those values are valid or not. Okay, I say that C1 plus C2 plus C3, C4 plus C5 less than or equal to 1 lakh or greater than or equal to 1 lakh. So if that constraint is getting violated, then the data cannot be put into. The action is going to get aborted, right? So constraint can be on a column or constraint can be on a table, and that depending based on the other columns actually. Right, so now let's actually see an example. So here what I can do is I have my persons table, and whenever I am entering age, I can check actually age should be greater than 18. Check age is greater than 18. That is one way. The second way is you can actually make use of the constraint keyword, constraint and constraint name, check. Now this time what I'm saying is age is greater than 18 and city equal to, let's say the city name is going to be New Delhi. Okay, so age is greater than 18 and whatever the city name is there, right? That city name should be New Delhi. That is the constraint. Okay. Yeah, so this is what we can do when we are creating a table. So once the table is created, you can actually alter the table and add the check constraint. So alter table persons add check is greater than or equal to 18. Now alter table persons add constraint check percentage check age is greater than 18 and city equal to, let's say, New Delhi. Okay, so like that we can actually make up, right? So as an example, what I do, we already have orders table, right? And I'm going to alter that orders table. Alter table orders, add, check, order amount should be greater than or equal to 10,000. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do for the check constraint here. Since I have already orders table here, right? And here order amount is actually everything is greater than 10,000, right? So now I am actually saying whenever you are adding some amount to this particular column, it should be greater than 10,000. So that's what I want to specify here. Yeah, so let's write that. Okay, so how I am going to use this check constraint. So DESC orders. Yeah, so now we have the default value set for order date. Now this order amount, I am going to write one check constraint. So alter table orders. Okay. And here what we need to do is I'm going to add check constraint, add check. Okay. So I'm just using add actually. So I'm not using this constraint. I can write using constraint also. I'm just using simpler method. Alter table orders, add check. what need to be checked actually? So order amount, whatever the order amount is there, order underscore amount, right? EMO UNT, order amount greater than or equal to 10,000. So if any value which is less than 10,000 should not be allowed actually. Now let's see. Yeah, so it's accepted actually. So now let me actually disk orders. In the describe orders, I am not actually able to see this particular thing, but when you say show create table orders, then you can actually see here. So constraint orders check one, check order amount greater than or equal to 10,000. So in this example, so I have actually order date as the current date, and this constraint check order amount greater than 10,000, right? So now let me actually insert some data into this. So select star from orders. Now I try to insert some data, insert into orders amount equal to, let's say 25,000. 25,000 will be allowed actually, right? Query okay. Okay, that is the 7th order ID. If I say 15,000, so 15,000 is also allowed because it's greater than 10,000. Now I say 10,000 greater than or equal to 10,000. So this is also allowed, right? Now select star from orders. So I have 9 records. Even 10,000 is also there. Now this time I am going to enter a value which is actually 1 rupee less than 10,000. Double line. Insert into orders. Order amount values double line. So will it be allowed? What is the check constraint? Check constraint says order amount should be greater than 10, greater than or equal to 10,000. But I am giving 1 rupee less. So now check constraint order is violated. That's how check constraint will actually enforce this integrity. So what data should go to that particular column, right? So I cannot actually give a value which is less than 10,000. That's what the check constraint is about actually. Okay, so in order to specify the check constraint, while creating the table, you can do that. And while creating, we can actually mention constraint and alter table we have seen. And this one also we can write actually. Add constraint, check not only just one value, we can actually have many values here. You can actually have many values. Okay, so we can actually specify also order date also. We can specify order date. We can actually write a constraint where the amount should be greater than this much and order date equal to so and so. Like that, the multiple constraint, multiple values, multiple columns, we can actually have the check. So these are the 4 ways where you can actually do that. See, for any constraint, like primary key or unique key or check and coming foreign key, you have always 4 ways. One is create table and simply writing the key, and creating table and making use of the constraint, and 2 with alter table, making it simple column value, and the 4th one is altering table using this particular constraint. Okay, so for all these table level constraint, we have these 4 options. Any of them we can actually use. So mostly some things will not work with the create table. So we plainly create the table, and later we can actually make use of the alter table to add and drop constraints as well. Okay, so hope you have understood this check constraint, and before that this particular default constraint. And in the next class, we are going to see the foreign key constraint. Thank you.